As someone who unironically completed this game 17 times, I thought, why haven't I created a list of the best builds in this game yet? Even considering that in any game the number of strongest builds is limited and many of them are similar, I have tried to include as many conceptually different builds as possible, with varied gameplay and weaponry with which you can easily scorch fire on, quick criteria to avoid any questions. S tier means that build can easily complete the entire game with just one character. A tier can easily complete the third act with just one character. B tier, just a very strong build that can easily complete the game if you know the roads and add one more character. You can use these builds if you're playing with a friend or want to develop a romantic storyline with an NPC. Okay, let's start with the B tier. First here is the Sorcerer Warlock. Eldrich Blast's the strongest cantrip in the game, and essentially the only playable one. The core of the build is taking a Warlock and obtaining the Devil's Sight passive, allowing us to cast darkness and shoot blasts from within it. Even considering that darkness was nerfed a little in recent patches, that's still one of the best save mechanics. With the Sorcerer's multiclass, we can convert all our spell slots into sorcery points, enabling you to fire 3 blasts per turn using a bonus action. Damage of the build is scaling with high charisma and can be further boosted by items like Orin's Dagger and Deadshot. While build is strong, it's only B tier due to several reasons, including low survivability and significantly less damage compared to a warrior or a lightning mage. Additionally, although darkness game-changing in many fights, some enemies like Cleric can bypass it, making it impossible to beat him solo with this build. But inexpensive gear with pretty good damage and some support potential make this build a solid choice for a team. Next in the list is the Circle of the Moon Berserk Druid. A truly unique and interesting build that just destroys everyone in early game, alongside with monks. Especially in the first act, Monk and Druid are the strongest. Look, you have a powerful combination of Rage and Bear Form, and Berserker's Rage. The form provides a massive amount of HP and Rage halves all the damage taken, while also granting advantages on strength checks. Once you acquire the All-Bear form, you're cool until the third act. This build works as a great tank due to the near infinite HP, 2 transformations with 100 HP each, plus your default character HP and armor class. If you're playing on Dark Arch, you get an additional 150 HP from the Slayer form. All that stuff may seem like an exploit, but mathematically, just the high AC build will be stronger. You know, Druid doesn't scale with gear that much, which is a plus for a first blind playthrough when you don't know where all the best stuff is located. So I see Druid more as a support role, that anyway offers about 50 damage per turn in the third act due to Barbarian's extra attack that's somehow stuck with Druid's form additional attack, so we make 3 for 1 action. Well, now we have another Druid, but that's a range Spore Circle Druid. Range classes always been overpowered in Baldur's Gate. But there's one thing, range damage doesn't scale with specific class level, that leaves us mainly one option to increase our damage per turn, to gain extra attacks. You know, Bard's Slashing Flourish, Ranger's extra attack, Warrior's Action Surge, and Druid's Spores is the only one option to somehow boost damage per hit for a bowman. Using Balist's armor and other damage modificators, you probably get the best damage per hit possible on the range character. Aside the last S tier build, you can't get more than that monster. But in my opinion, the Druids is one of the weakest crossbow/bow users. The build involves combining Ranger, Bard and Druid for up to 10 attacks per turn. Those hits are quite damaging, but the build doesn't abuse enough in-game mechanics to raise it higher than B. Melee Bard Warrior, or a Blade Dancer. This build is similar to a Paladin with daggers that I mention in the future, but this version is less demanding for rare and expensive items, have more control potential due to the Battlemaster subclass, and don't forget about bonus feat that fighter gets at 6th level. On the bad side, Warrior has no smites. For that very reason, it's a B tier. But anyway, cause of Ballast armor, the lack of damage compared to a Paladin is not so noticeable. Overall, the build is cool. I don't know what else to say about it, really. You just walk around with rappers and knives, slash enemies, have flourishes, warrior additional attack and action surge, and have high mobility. It's pretty fun, but can it complete honor mode solo? definitely not. However, for role-playing, it's quite good. And that's all for the B tier. There are only 4 builds. Of course, I could add a summoner, but it's more like a weaker version of a Necromancer without his necro spells. Or I can remember Pure Ranger with his volley, which is essentially just a caster that don't need rests to replenish spell slots, because volley doesn't require them, but it has much less damage than mages and sorcerers, and only usable with specified party that aimed on ignoring long rests. It has too many variables, so I can't call Ranger even a B tier, so we move to the A tiers. Necromancer. This is the heavy artillery, because yes, with proper play, with this build you can solo Raphael, Gartosh and other bosses. Why do I separate builds for the third act and the whole game? Is because in third act the developers have thrown in so many OP items that allows you to dominate with any build from A tier. Specifically, our Necromancer has an item called the Staff of Cherished Necromancy. Literally allows you to cast necrotic spells for free. Just kill someone, absorb their life force, and cast a 6-circle spell for free. And yes, this stuff you can find only in third act. In our case, this item is build forming, but believe me, this one stick is enough to wipe out every mouse fight in the game. Don't forget about all the summons, elemental, and all other necromancer shit that should have been main feature of the class, if not that stuff. And yeah, there's a poison cloud with 40 damage and lots of HP thanks to armor and amulet. The only downside is that before the third act, it's a stinking pile of useless shit. Well, okay, in first acts it's just a default mid build. More than playable, but definitely not viable for a solo honor mode, so you're forced to wait for the third act. Next up is the default Sword Paladin. The thing is that in this game, especially in the third act, no physical damage except piercing makes sense. So all that stuff you can see on YouTube doesn't reveal the potential of the class even by a half. Paul is the most popular class in the game, so you probably understand how it works. Grab the thickest armor, the biggest stick, and face roll everyone with Divine Smite. The default Paladin's maximum spell circle is the third. So we multiclass into a Bard to get flourishes and a 5th circle of spells as well. Although for smites, this counts as another 4th slot. Additionally, in Paladin builds, you can stack items that increase crit chance, and along with the risky ring, the crit chance becomes something like this. The only downside is the spell slots, which, as we know, tend to run out. It might be tough to solo the game on this build, I haven't tried at least. However, with some noble stocks abuse and explosive in Nether Brain fight, I think it's possible. In 4th place, we have an Ice Mage. Cool for role-playing, but overall is a default mage who has acquired overpowered items in the third act. Due to the damage multiplication for wet targets, Ice Mage works like the Lightning Mage build from the S tier. Cast water, and with 6 circle spells, Kareshka's Blessing and Haste, the damage speaks for itself. And don't forget, we still have slots for good armor. So build has no problems with AC. I recommend to play 11 levels as Sorcerer, and at level 12 multiclass into Cleric for a water spell. Even without water, Ice Mage is pretty effective, and if you have some Druid or Cleric party members, you don't have any problems to begin with. Alright, after the Ice Mage, we have the Fire Mage, to balance things out. As you understand, these two mages differ significantly. Due to one skill, Scorching Ray, it fires 8 attack per action, which are boosted by Gloves of Spell Might, and with all the damage scales you can collect in the second and third act, you begin to feel like a user of Hazard Comet from Elden Ring. Ring of Light, Reverberation, Falar Aloof, and buffed crits, the whole package. Plus there's a splash damage with Fireball or Firewall if needed. In 6th place is the Mage with Magic Missile. And yes, Magic Missile is the only usable skill in this build. It works similarly to the Fire Mage, simply stacking items that scales with multiple consecutive hits, and with that Mage deals millions of damage. However, the Gloves of Spell Might don't work with this build. But the Sparks and this cool hat do. This hat that Tara sells is our main power spike here. There is literally no build that works better with this item. And don't forget, Magic Missile ignores AC, allowing us to ignore items that boost hit chance. Well, that closes the A tier, and we move to the most interesting S tier. Let's start from the Monk. I wouldn't say that he's stronger than the Paladin on power spike, but unlike the Paladin, Monk is strong at all stages of the game, and Monk requires less long rests. With potions of Enchanted Reprieve, you can even ignore resting mechanic. A strength potion, the Town Brawler talent, gloves for extra damage and huge move speed. All of that in first 2 acts. Also we have Manifestation of Mind, which stacks well with the Resonant Stone found in Catherick Lair. That's some serious damage. I have a lot more to say about this, but the time is limited, so I just say that Monk is one of the best melee classes. I already beat it Honor mode solo on this build. It was not as easy as when I played on tier 1 build, but anyway. Next, Barbarian Thrower build. This one has no analogs, that's the throwing mechanic after all. There are not that many weapons for it, you just use Nerulna's Trident by default, or Dwarven Hammer if enemy is close. Sometimes weapons that must return to your hand causes bugs, and if you have too many items in inventory, throwing may cause stutters. But it's worth it. Firstly, because of the enormous attack range, sometimes even more than an average bow build. With that it's pretty easy to kite any enemy. That's how I killed Raphael, for example. Just fly away on my Lithid ability and poke the red boyos with my long stick from a solid range. In a build we have multiclassed Warrior, Berserker and Rogue. The Warrior adds extra actions and increases crit chance, the Barbarian lets us throw shit with a cost of a bonus action, and the Rogue gives us a second bonus action. Thrower is one of the most common builds in the game, by the way. When I played Baldur's Gate for the first time, I had like 3 those characters in my party. The build is very chill, you fly around the map throwing stuff at enemies and of course have massive AC, typical thing for all S tier builds. But even without range, if you somehow found yourself surrounded in a crowd of enemies, cause their hit chance is almost 0, you can easily break the distance. Next is a jumper build. You see in the first act there's an interesting hammer that deals 1d4 thunder damage when your character is landing. The trick is, aside with jump, this works with flight, so you can fly a meter next to an enemy and deal damage. The game allows to boost your movement with spells and items till you reach about 40 meters with 1 dash. And with Rogue multiclass, we get 2 extra dashes per turn due to second bonus action. Adding haste increases our movement speed by 10 and adds another action, giving us another 40 meters in our case. You can calculate all that stuff by yourself. And remember, flying can cover twice the distance of walking, and each meter is 1d4 damage. As I understand, in real time, movement of such a character looks something like this. In the game exists a bug which recovers part of your movement speed after reloading the save, so potential damage of this build is literally infinite. Despite the fact that from a gameplay point of view the build is unique, it's incredibly tedious, so in my playthroughs I usually use it for synergy, with builds with more DPS. You can expect a video where I beat an Honor mode in 1 turn after the release of the 7th patch. This flying build will be there, and I explain its mechanics in more detail. Paladin Bard with daggers and all other thrusting melee weapons. In terms of leveling, it's almost a regular paladin, and you might wonder why use some daggers when there's the Baldur sword, which deals tons of damage. But then we remember my beloved ballast armor, which doubles all piercing damage. The problem with swords is that they deal slashing damage, but daggers and Nerulna doesn't. Don't forget, daggers also provide a bonus action attack, effectively giving an additional 100 damage per turn. Also at the 3rd act we get a dagger that deals an extra 14 damage if you have an advantage. Just combine it with the gloves that you can buy from Barcus in the 2nd act. They grant advantage without any downside. Unironically, this build can deal 200 damage per attack, and if it crits, even more. And we have 5 such attacks per turn, and a level 6 Elemental and Spirit Guardians, which I cleverly included in this build. They add another 40 damage per turn. You have that if you take 2 levels of Paladin and 10 of College Lore Bard. If you decide to make build even more 1-turn based and aggressive, I don't know, you want to kill Honor mode Raphael in 1 turn, you get 2 levels on Paladin, 8 in Sword Bard and 2 in Warrior. So you have Action Surge and Flourishes. That allows you to beat people who charmed you, like, Raphael. In short, this build is insanely powerful. Only warning is that while using it, I always want to choose the most disgusting choices in quests. In 4th place, we have a mysterious build, which you could say no one has made a guide for on YouTube. We have multiclassed Bard and Dolor Amarus daggers, which increase our piercing damage by 24 per attack. For a build based on the number of attacks, this is crazy powerful. Yes, it needs a crit, but we have a guaranteed crit from the Lithid ability, and our overall with our items, the crit chance is over 20%, which is huge combined with Dagger's bonus damage. Dolor single-handedly drags the Bard class into the meta, purely because of the gigantic number of attacks that he produces from his slashing flourish. Here you can see the leveling and items. Yeah, this build requires long resting, which distinguishes it from other top-tier range builds, but as a one-turn glass cannon, I think it's worth it. We smoothly move to the third place, which is the Lightning Mage build. And oh yeah, 6x damage multiplication, destructive wrath, around 1.5 damage boost, wetting enemies, doubles damage, and guaranteed crits, another x2 damage boost. Theoretically, the builds below deal more damage, but in practice, all the attacks of this mage are splash, which can hit up to 10 enemies per cast. And unlike the Ice Mage, all this is available to us at the very beginning of the game. We immediately multiclass to Cleric and get Channel Divinity, along with Creating Water, and I don't even know what to explain here. We simply have 3 lightning skills and 3 destructive wraths, with which we annihilate anyone who looks at us sideways. If you want even more AoE and crowd control in exchange for a little detriment of solo target damage, add to the same gear 1 Helmet of Grit, and spec to full sorcerer. With that stuff, many boss fights can be done solo in one turn, and of course I can't forget the Marker Hashcare, which allows us to cast 4 level 6 lightning spells per 1 long rest. What am I even saying if some dude already completed Baldur's Gate with 1 hit using this build? Second place, a warrior of legends. Of course, right now it's not a question, can a build solo complete honor mode? From the second place, it's more like, can this build kill undead dragon in 1 turn? One of the most powerful weapons of mankind, just a regular fighter. Okay, there's a 1 level cleric multiclass, just to add more attacks. This build simply combines all the most OP elements in Baldur's Gate. Range that allows us to use consumable double damage arrows, balanced armor with another x2 damage multiplication, cause arrows deal piercing damage as you remember, ability to boost the armor class to enormous numbers with shields, cloak of displacement that amplifies our evasion even more, and fighters built-in HP, which is only surpassed by berserkers, who cannot be archers. The last and the strongest for solo playthroughs is my Rogue Ranger with 2 hand crossbows. This one, aside of soloing honor mode and killing Answer in 1 turn, can do this without any short and long rests, literally. It has all the previous build pros, but instead of countermelee we use hand crossbows. That allows us to make up to 8 attacks per turn without depending on War Priest charges. Yeah, hand crossbows, lack of base damage, but it's more than compensated by long rest buffs that we can collect throughout the game that don't expire, because with this build you can just ignore sleeping mechanic. In second and third act the game starts showering you with a ton of buffs that lasts till long rest, which in total doubles damage of a character and also make it more durable. Along with special arrows that double already multiplied damage, this is a real death killer Shadow Slayer Dark Merciless Silent Assassin. Soloing honor mode on this build is just a joke. You won't get tired of juggling complex spells, cast sequences and all that stuff, because there's no useless slots at the bottom tab. With this build, Baldur's Gate is more like a shooter. And guys, playing this stuff really feels satisfying, primarily due to triple-digit damage figures. Link to my guide on it in the description. There I explained everything step by step. And with that, thank you for watching and good luck.